This is so crazy. This is literally what books are written about on these like startup companies that like this is like the start of Uber to me. Like it's a very similar like, hey, like there's an idea that just makes sense, but there's nothing's doing it. And then you just kind of keep twisting and turning. It's like, yeah, how is that not out there right now? And then it's like, oh,
It is a very Airbnb, Uber-like type origin story.
I can't wait to watch your movie.
Yeah, I would love to have a movie made about me one day. One day. I've got so many things in life I want to do, so I'm trying to make my life movie worthy.
Welcome to Find Your Freedom, the best entrepreneurship podcast. Congrats. You have found the go-to resource for aspiring entrepreneurs, providing insight from the world's most successful, interesting, and relatable entrepreneurs. Being an entrepreneur is hard. That is why we created findyourfreedompod.com to compile all the resources you need to find your own freedom. We just finished recording with Richard Lee, founder of Venue in the UK. Sometimes when podcasts finish, Doug and I look at each other and say, we were so lucky to get that guest on the podcast. And Richard was one of those guests. Richard gave insight into how he started in the corporate world at Deloitte, then after 1 year, stepped away to start his own company and followed his dreams. The insight he gives on the struggles of being an aspiring entrepreneur and now growing a company, getting funding, and just absolutely blowing it up is a true success story, and you're going to love it. Thank you so much for joining in today. Don't forget, subscribe, follow, and check out findyourfreedompod.com. Yo. Welcome, Richard. Super excited to have you on with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Feel honored to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you.
Welcome to the podcast, Richard.
Thanks so much. I want to jump right into it. Well, Doug and I were researching your background. I really found this super interesting, kind of the way that you progressed through time. So you were barista. And then it looks like you got a dream job at Deloitte, and then you left that, and it says on there that you had 2 years of working in industry research. And I was curious, kind of, if you could talk us through that a little bit, give us some more color on how that all happened.
Yeah, for sure. So I've always been one of those people that's entrepreneurial minded, shall we say. I started my first sort of business venture at 14, where I was buying and selling football boots, and then that moved into clothes. And I kind of had that as I grew up, and yeah, it got bigger than I thought it would. But that was sort of from 14 to up about till 17 years old. But I started my actual career working when I was 16, alongside doing my A-levels. So those are the set of exams that you do from 16 to 18 in the UK that send you off to university. So I was doing that, and that was my first sort of taste of work. I was working in a coffee shop, and it was part-time whilst I was doing my exams. But then I finished my exams, so I was studying economics and politics. And I went into a pretty prestigious job, pretty cushy job in Deloitte. So I was doing international corporate audit from there. So that was a study while you work kind of scheme. So I was doing my qualifications whilst working at Deloitte. So yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, we got to work on some incredible companies, work with, global companies, go through their accounts, see how teams work, see how they build culture, see different processes and operations. So yeah, really, really big learning process for me. And then, after about a year, took the leap sort of through personal experience, which is where the whole company started. And it went into that sort of industry experience, and there's a big breakdown to that. So I'd be happy to go into kind of what that industry experience was.
I'm so curious. So you're at Deloitte. Was it just a 1 year thing, or you actually like left Deloitte to go do the industry research?
Yeah, so it wasn't a 1 year thing. It was a full-time thing, but things happened. It wasn't entirely going the way I wanted to. Again,
gotcha.
I'm very much one of those people that's like, I'm not employable, I would say. Like, maybe that'll come back to bite me. But
I know that's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, because this is like people work their whole educational time with the goal of making a job at Deloitte. So you're kind of glancing it over like it's not this amazing thing that like people work really, really hard for to get that job. So it's not a small thing to step away from that. So you were there and you're like looking around and you're just saying like, yeah, this just isn't what I was dreaming of. Like, how did that, what was your headspace then?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to do what I'm doing now. Really and truly, I've always wanted to run a business. My first memory, and it sounds cliche, but genuinely the only thing I can remember from being 4 or 5 years old is just business, business, business. And what do you know about business at 4 or 5 years old? You don't know anything, but I would constantly say it. That's all I ever wanted to be.
Right.
So yeah, I was at Deloitte, and like I say, I kind of went into that because in the UK, there's not a massive push to become an entrepreneur. It's really not seen as like a normal thing to do. It's very much school, university, job, retire. That's it. And that's just not me. Like I can't do that. And there's days as an entrepreneur you think, what am I doing? This is crazy.
Why did I choose this road?
yeah. You don't know what your thought process is. But then every time I do that 5 minutes, I'm done. I'm thinking, I can't see myself doing anything else. I really can't. And that was the case at Deloitte.
Wow.
It wasn't really going my way. I mean, I was getting on. I loved everyone I worked with. Great team, really insightful. But yeah, it just wasn't the right fit for me. And this opportunity presented itself. It's very much I experienced the problem firsthand. Thought this is my opportunity. Something came up, and I jumped and took it. And then, this is where then the sort of industry experience comes in around jumping into the business, maybe a bit prematurely.
I love that. Yeah. So now let's sort of transition to a current day. So you founded Venue back in 2021, I believe, right?
So yeah, this is the thing around that industry experience. So we started work when I left Deloitte immediately. I was like, this is what I want to go for. I'm doing this. And then we started putting stuff together for it and started doing the research, like getting the MVP put together and whatnot.
So you walked away from Deloitte and you knew I wanted to you knew like the whole concept of Venue is what you wanted to do.
Yeah, straight away. So
wow.
Yeah, so when I was at Deloitte, I was like the youngster there, and they said, "Oh, Rich, you can organize a handful of work events and socials." And I started to get in the process of it and realize how difficult it actually is. So yeah, that's kind of where the seed was planted. And yeah, I left Deloitte the back end of 2019 with the idea of sort of, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to push this now. And then a few months later, we all know what happened. COVID struck and everything just collapsed, closed in on itself.
No events happening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the whole industry.
What a time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Perfect timing. So the whole industry came down on itself. And I'm not someone that's going to just sit there and be like, oh, that's it. I've done it. That's the world telling me don't do it. That's not me. So I just thought I'll take the time to get involved in the industry as much as possible, learn about startups as much as possible, because I always say if COVID hadn't happened and I'd gone ahead with what I was meant to do, or what I'm doing now at that time, I would have just flopped. It wouldn't have worked because I wasn't ready. I didn't know what startups were really. I just thought, we'll start a business. I didn't understand the tech scene landscape at all because it just isn't a normal thing around here. So I would have just gone into it and I would have collapsed. So I'm very grateful in hindsight that actually happened, because it gave me that chance to understand the hospitality industry more. I've obviously got experience in that industry, but really get into the depths of the problems from the supply side of our marketplace. But also, understand investment, understand data rooms, and putting different company structures in place and employing people and so on. So yeah, really, really grateful that actually happened and I was able to learn.
Wow. It sounds like COVID was the best thing that ever happened to you.
It was.
In your young business career. So looking at that part of your history there, Rich, I see that you're 1 year at Deloitte before, like you said, you took that leap. And for me, it took 5.5 years. Like I was beavering away in a cubicle for 5.5 years before I felt that I was prepared and that I was ready to go out and do this very scary thing of going out and becoming an entrepreneur and working for myself. To do it after only 1 year. And like Jonathan said, you're at a prestigious company, you have this prestigious career in front of you, and you throw it all away to go out on your own. How did you feel ready after only 1 year?
So I live my life by the statement of there's no rules. Like, I don't believe there are rules in life, apart from obviously the laws that you have to abide by that are set by the government. I don't think there's any way that anyone has to live their life. If you can turn around to me and show me a handbook that says this is the perfect way to live life and it is proven that is correct, I'll say fair enough. But I'm pretty confident you can't. So
you haven't read that
for
book
me,
yet,
I definitely haven't read that book, and I don't think anyone has. And it just goes back to the point of just looking at myself and saying, am I going to do this for the rest of my life? No. Do I feel like I'm in the right place now doing it? No. Has an opportunity arisen, or can I make an opportunity? More often than not, you can make an opportunity. You can find something. You can speak to someone. You can start the ball rolling. And yeah, I don't think you'll ever feel ready. No one will be like, yeah, like this is the right time. The right time will never come. It's just you've got to know that if you have that itch, you've got to scratch it, because no one's going to scratch it for you.
I love that.
So true. So true. Yeah. Only you can know when you're ready. And yeah, the truth is nobody's ever really, really ready. But you mentioned earlier that, had COVID not hit, you would have jumped in head first and flopped and fumbled. And because of COVID, you had to kind of go about it in a little more slow and calculated fashion. So take us through those 2 years of industry research. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but what were those things that you were doing during those 2 years to really get ready and prepare for the actual launch of Venue?
Yeah, so it was two sides of things I really wanted to research, and I feel like I did my own university degree just off of just work that I put in.
Right.
So the first side was sort of just understanding the hospitality industry as much as possible, because I used to work in the coffee shop, like you mentioned beforehand, when I was doing my A levels, and I used to open up that coffee shop at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I would close it at 5 p.m. And I would say, we pay for the rent for 4 hours of the day. We pay for the electricity for 24 hours of the day. We pay for all the lights, the fridges, the maintenance, everything. It's 24 hours a day, but we only operate for 8 hours a day. So we're not seeing a return on investment for that full 24 hours. So immediately when I was sort of 16, 17, I thought, how can we sort of optimize this asset? So then going into that industry research, I wanted to speak to other venues, people who run hospitality spaces and so on. How do you optimize your asset? What do you do outside of just normal trading hours? Go in there, understand the processes, what their attitude was as well, to sort of trying to bring new things into their premises. That's something that's changed massively because of COVID. And
Right.
again, over here, we have the cost of living crisis, which is been detrimental to that industry. So again, I got the opportunity to work very, very closely with these businesses where their energy bills have gone up by 130%. Their footfall's gone down by 85%. So they're losing thousands of pounds every single day. I was able to get in with these businesses, understand where that pinch is really hitting the most, and how we can build something that enables them to get the most out of that asset, but then also enable them to collaborate with other events businesses in the industry. So we don't just work with venues, we have caterers, entertainers, everything, that whole event. So it was also being able to connect the industry a lot better, because that was one of the issues that they struggled with. But then on the other side, I also did a lot of work around, like I say, educating myself with startups, the processes of raising money, hiring people, scaling, even just starting the company. Because as I said, I've always been interested in business, but it's really just not seen as an option over here as much as it is stateside or maybe in other places. It's not pushed enough, and it's something I feel passionate about pushing. But
so you were gaining all this learning and education and knowledge from connecting with business owners and talking to different people in the space, reaching out to all these folks and inviting them for coffee, taking them out to lunch, that type of thing?
yeah, just speak to them. I would just go into places and I would ask to speak to the people. I think not enough people do that these days. Just go to the place and see if you can have a conversation, and the worst they'll say is sorry, I'm too busy, or I can't right now. But I didn't get that really, maybe one or two, but the majority of people would be happy to just sit down with me, have a chat, and go through their business and where their struggles are and so on. And then in terms of the actual business side of stuff and learning about tech startups and whatnot, I was just on webinars, I was reading stuff that was sent through by certain organizations. We have one community in Cardiff around tech startups, so I got myself really heavily involved in that, and just trying to learn off my peers a lot. And it's just a get yourself out there and throw yourself in the deep end kind of way of learning.
Yeah, right on. So with Venue, once you did get that off the ground, when did you start to see some traction with it? When was it apparent that, okay, this thing has some legs?
Yeah, so I feel like with every startup, you go through waves of traction when you first launch, because it's still like step by step by step. You're still putting the bricks together and kind of building the boat as you sail, as they say, building the plane as you fly. But the first kind of we launched the MVP, shall we say, sort of mid last year, and immediately we got loads of people just organically downloading. To this day, we've done zero marketing spend. We haven't spent a penny on acquiring any customers.
That's remarkable.
We've done it all organically. Obviously, that's not sustainable forever, but for now, it's something that we're very proud of. So within the first sort of 3 months, we saw really big user growth. And then after that 3-month period of us being live, we then started to see really consistent bookings. And then ever since, well, for our growth over the last 7 months has been 82% GMV growth month on month. Over the last 5 months, our revenue has grown at an average of 110%. So it's really that 3 to 6 month mark is where we saw real financial growth, but the first 3 months is where we saw real user growth.
Right out of the gate, the first 90 days of the company?
Yeah, immediately. So, and again, it was just all word of mouth stuff. So that was something that, again, we were really, really proud of. And with it, so we launched Snap because that's what we had the request from our consumers, from our users, that they were like, we do everything like this, app-based, Airbnb, app-based, all these kind of booking platforms, they do it app-based. But the problem with launching an app is you don't get the benefits of SEO. It's not like there's no ways that you can growth hack like you can with a website. So we're definitely building that now, and it would probably have been easier if we launched first with a website rather than an app, in all honesty.
That can help the organic growth to keep growing.
Yeah, I mean, we have a website now. It doesn't have the full functionality of the app, but even now the website numbers are significantly higher than what the app numbers are. We're probably at 4-to-1 website to app at the moment. So I would definitely launch with a web.
Can you give us a quick description on what exactly Venue is, so our audience really knows, like, what was this concept that you had, and now that it's taking off, what are the users getting?
Yeah, for sure. So Venue, that we describe it, is your co-pilot for organizing corporate events. So we enable any corporate event organizer to organize a corporate event in 2 minutes rather than 2 months. So the existing process takes around 2 months, and
Awesome.
With our platform, you do it in 2 minutes. So yeah, it's just streamlining that process, mostly for executive assistants, is who our sort of key customer is. But the plan is, once we've smashed that corporate events industry, we're able to replicate it across all different types of events.
That's awesome. One of the things that really stood out to me about what you just discussed is something that I'd heard previously from you, that you just basically you're just assertive. You walk into businesses, you want to know what these hospitality industry people are struggling with. You go in, you find them, you talk to them face to face, you walk in and you go take care of that. Another thing that I heard you talk about is how when you're going in fundraising, you just cold email, cold direct message people on LinkedIn. I was wondering if you could talk to our audience. I think that a lot of people really struggle with either having the confidence in themselves or in their idea to be able to reach out to people. Do you have any tips to help people who are struggling with doing that? It sounds like you didn't struggle with that at all. What is it that you do, or what is it that you're thinking, and what strategies do you have that kind of can help that be more successful?
Yeah, well, I'll be completely honest. When I first started, I struggled massively. I was awful at it. I was terrible.
There we go. Me too.
So yeah, I was horrifically bad, because I'm naturally quite a charismatic, confident person. So I thought I could rock up and I could just win them with charm and confidence. Very wrong. Not correct at all. And it got to the point where I'd turn up to these venues when we had our product, and I'd say oh, can you sign up to the website, please? Because we've built this website. And it just wasn't good at all. So I was awful to start with. And it's only become really good now just through constant practice, feedback, and honest self-reflection. You have to be completely honest with yourself. So now it works every single time, because I believe that confidence is a reflection of self-evidence proof, in that something that you've done, and you can say, I have done this, so why can't I do this 100 times? So now we've got big FTSE 100 companies using our platform, big banks, big four accountancy firms have used our platform to organize their events. So I can approach these venues and these services now and say, hey, we've got X, Y, and Z using our platform. They're actively organizing their events through us. We would like to put you in front of them. Is that something you'd be up for? They say yes every single time, because what you're doing is you're giving them that social proof, or that proof that you can provide them with what they want. They want bookings. They want to be working for these big companies. They want to be hired by these big companies. I'm telling them we can bring them that because we can,
Right.
and it works every single time. So we have that proof. What you've got to do is just build that proof over time. You're not going to get a big corporate company straight away, but what you can do is approach a local company, an SME that might be hosting something that you can help with. And even if you have to get on your hands and knees to do every single bit very manually, just to get it over the line for them, you do it, because then you've got that proof that people are interested in your service. You can provide that service, and then you can go on and replicate it. And that is exactly what these people want. You've got to tell them that you can give them what they want, but you have to know that you can actually give that to them.
I love that. And then what about the other side of it? What about this cold direct messaging, either be it LinkedIn? I know it seems like kind of there's like a generational gap. Not as many of the younger people are using LinkedIn, but I know I recently, just in the last year, through this podcast, I've gotten more active on LinkedIn and seeing how easy, both via Twitter and LinkedIn, just DMing people cold out of nowhere, people that you would think would never respond to you. And they really quickly, I mean, we've had some of our best guests come on this podcast just from me like DMing them and saying like, hey, like, I love what you're doing. I think this content you're providing is awesome. I'm really a big fan, and then getting some back and forth and then saying, hey, just, like we have a podcast for aspiring entrepreneurs. And they're like, oh yeah, I'd love to come on. It's like remarkable how that happens. Can you kind of talk through the strategy that you have to help the audience with those cold reach outs?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, same boat. LinkedIn is fantastic. And the conversations I've had with people on LinkedIn, you just can't even imagine that you'd have conversations with these people in day to day.
Right.
But everything that I do when cold messaging on LinkedIn is very intentional. It's a case of actually wanting to speak to them, like I say earlier, about something other than the money.
Right.
If you're approaching someone for money, well, you've got to put yourself in the investor's shoes, right? If someone comes to you and says, hey, we're building this and we want your money, they're going to be like, why should I give you my money, kind of thing? Who are you? What have you done to earn that right? But it's really relationship building. And 9 times out of 10, someone is going to be happy to give you 5 minutes of advice, 10 minutes of advice on something you're struggling with. So, for example, something that I use, an example is, I'll find people who are very involved in scaling marketplaces before. I don't position us as a marketplace anymore, but there's a similarity there. So someone who's built and scaled a marketplace or been involved with that process before, I'll reach out to them and say, hey, so-and-so, I really wanted to message you given your experience at X marketplace, because we're having a bit of an issue at the moment keeping our supply side growing as fast as our end users are. I'd love to get you insight. Would you have 10 minutes to have a chat? And then I'll just drop 3 lines about who we are. And so 1 line about who we are, 2 lines about what we've achieved. So they have a bit of an idea of like, okay, they're actually serious. My time is going to something valuable. And more often than not, they'll say, yeah, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, just put some time in my diary and I'd be happy to have a chat. And then from there, you can kind of work that relationship, build that rapport. And more often than not, if you can have those 3, 4, 5 meetings about that, they'd be quite happy to give you the money or get involved in some capacity, whether that be intros to other investors or their own money.
I love that.
That was a great piece of advice.
Yeah, that's so huge. Just to reach out and have the confidence to reach out. And one thing that you said earlier before we came online was like, what's the worst that can happen? I really think that's such a critical piece that people struggle with is like, like, I don't want to reach out. And it's just like, what's the fear? If they don't respond to you, then, there's probably 20 other people that you can just reach out to them next, but there's no negative. And when they do respond, like you were just talking about, one of your advisors for your company has opened so many doors for you. And how did you meet that advisor? Through cold reach out.
And one thing I'd add to that is that I've cold messaged people before on LinkedIn and got airtime, completely blank, didn't get anything back. But I've met them at an event a few weeks after and they've said, oh, you did message me, didn't you? Yeah, let me get back to you. And then we've set up a meeting and it's gone further. So even if you don't get that response, it immediately acts as that first foot in the door with them. So they recognize who you are. They recognize you reached out before. They know that there's been effort there. So they immediately have a good impression. And if you guys want to hear something a bit unconventional I did to get investors' attention, I'd be more than happy to sort of throw that in.
Please.
So as I was saying before, so I'm from somewhere that isn't well connected with the whole VC industry or angel networks. So I have to try different things to try and get in front of investors. So one thing that I did was I identified a list of VCs that were perfect for us. I would never have been able to get in front of them via a cold email, cold messages, wouldn't have given me the time of day. So I thought, how can I get in front of them? How can I get their attention? So I decided to I found these VCs, and I found the best person that I could get in touch with at each VC, the best way into the VC. I would then go on their LinkedIn, Twitter, any articles they'd written on the internet, any YouTube videos they had done, and I would pick out nuggets of things that they liked. So whether that be they like skiing, or they like football, or a certain actor or film, whatever it might be.
Any sneak into their personal life, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Just one little snippet into their personal life, and you can really take that. So I came offline, and I thought, how many times do they actually get like letters written to them? How often do people actually get physical letters through their door from founders saying X, Y, and Z? So what I would do is I would write the name, hey Simon, or whatever it might be. And this guy, there's one guy in particular who he did a lot of tweets about Jude Bellingham, who's a footballer for England and Borussia Dortmund, saying how amazing Jude Bellingham is. So what I did was I said, hey Simon, I've been trying to get one foot in the door with you for a while, but it doesn't seem to be working. So what I've done is I've attached a picture of Jude Bellingham holding up his football boot, and I've decided to use this as a foot to get in the door instead, because I saw how much you love Jude Bellingham on Twitter. And then after that, I said, here's a quick paragraph about who we are and what we do, and then a QR code to me doing a video pitch, and that worked a treat. The LinkedIn, the VCs that I got to speak to because of that, I would never in a million years have got in front of them by just like sort of trying cold emails and so on. So you can be unconventional with it. You can try things that aren't exactly straightforward and the norm, and it works. People appreciate the effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about setting yourself apart.
Yeah, that's such an outside the box way of going about it. Like, people think it's all got to be online and getting in people's DMs, and yeah, sometimes just going old school with a handwritten letter will do the trick, because yeah, that's not what people expect anymore. So you do stand and set yourself apart. So what, we're hearing a lot today, I think, Rich, about, some of the things that have made you successful. What traits in particular do you ascribe to all the success that you've had so far in your early career?
Yeah.
Young career, I should say.
For me, the thing that I pride myself on, and I know my co-founders are the same, is just persistence and resilience. And I genuinely think that those are the two key things for any founder. I'm not like stupid. I would say I'm a smart person, but you can be smart. But if you don't have that level of, I'm going to go again and again and again and again, you're not going to do it. So for me, everything that I pride myself on as an entrepreneur and attribute my success. I say success. I'm nowhere near where I want to be, but the success that I've had so far is just down to pure resilience, relentlessness, fearlessness, that kind of thing.
Yeah, all those things. I think, most of them we've heard time and time again with our successful founders and entrepreneurs that we've had on the show. So that, I think that's kind of innate. Sometimes I think through our upbringing, we can kind of build some of that grit and some of that discipline. What are some of the things that maybe you didn't come to the table with when you first started off as an entrepreneur that you realize, like, I need to build this, I need to develop this skill and ability if I'm gonna get to where I want to be?
Yeah. Composure is key. So I see it quite a lot. People are very excited about their idea. They're excited about what they're doing, and you have every right to be. I think if you're setting up a business, you should be absolutely ecstatic and you should be excited. However, I do see a lot of the time that people, they don't have composure. So they'll get in front of someone that really can open the door to the next step, and it'll just be bang, 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 and they'll just go crazy, 100 words a second. And you completely disenfranchise the person that you're speaking to. So for me, there's composure around that, but also around decision making. So again, if you let emotions and excitement cloud decision making, that's a really big no-no. I've done that before in the past, so I could speak from experience where something hasn't gone my way and I've maybe reacted angrily or frustrated and so on. And you then have to really claw yourself back out from that. It's not an easy path to come back from. So I would say immediately I had to realize that, okay, you need to sort of bring it in, understand when you need to think before speaking, and realize it's not dangerous to take 2 minutes to yourself to make a decision. I mean, we see Elon Musk, for example, every time he's asked a question, he will sit there for 20, 30 seconds and he'll think of the answer before he actually says it.
I've
And
noticed that.
people might look at that like, oh, you crazy bloke. But it's such a good thing to have. If you can sit there and feel confident in thinking, let me think through this answer before I just blurt out a load of words, it will serve you massively. You'll benefit from it.
That's what's so funny, because sometimes he takes that time and then he still says some crazy shit, and you're like, "That's what you thought about."
Yeah, he does do that quite often.
I love that. I was curious. We asked each of our guests this question: how would you personally define entrepreneurship?
Yeah, and entrepreneurship it's a strange word, I would say, because it's been spread out across so many things, and I feel like, especially again, in my upbringing, entrepreneurship was quite a dirty word. I would say it's not what people expect. It's not what people would see as a normal thing, and you kind of get seen as someone that's probably just thinks they're too good for a job, or maybe can't be bothered to do a job, kind of thing. So that's what a lot of people where I'm from would see it. But for me, entrepreneurship is just about, I would say, the ultimate freedom. Like, and I think that fits in really nicely with what you guys say. I think it's for me, ultimate freedom is actually discipline. And there's a runner called Eliud Kipchoge, and he basically says the most free in life are the ones who are disciplined, because you're not a slave to your emotions. I'm paraphrasing there, but I think it's along the lines of that. And that's what entrepreneurship is for me. It's the fact that if you can turn around and you can be disciplined with yourself and understand, where your strengths are and what you're able to do, and maybe even where your weaknesses are, you will do a million times more than what you would do in just a normal 9 to 5. And that's not me saying 9 to 5 is bad. 9 to 5 is so good for a lot of people. That's what they want to do, and they're happy with that. But people have something inside them. They say, "Oh, what if I did this? What if I did that?" And that is what entrepreneurship is. It's that ultimate freedom of, this is my idea. I'm going to run with it. I'm going to see how big I can make this, what I can do with it. And that's what it's all about. It's that creative freedom and the ability to just push your luck, I would say.
That's such a great answer. I think that might be my favorite answer out of our 30 guests so far. That was brilliant. I like that you talked about kind of the dichotomy of entrepreneurship kind of being like, well, this norm, what you're told to do, kind of go work this corporate job, kind of go do this thing. Sometimes that just doesn't fit your personality or who you are, or who you want to be. And there's nothing wrong with either of those roads, but just certain people just don't get as much satisfaction, or they want to have more freedom and more like control over their own lives and decisions. And the entrepreneurship road kind of leads for those people. And I love how you kind of have that with your background. You're like, oh, I'm at Deloitte. I'm at this amazing company that everyone really wants to work for. And you immediately knew there was something. You're like, yeah, like this just doesn't fit me. And you walked on that road. And something else that you touched on that I thought was super interesting for all the American audience, like I do think it is interesting. You've referenced this a few times. I think in American culture, there is more of an openness to entrepreneurship. Whereas I don't even think we would realize that around the world, maybe it's not looked at as even an option for a lot of people. So I thought that was super interesting that you expanded on that. Was it your family, your whole neighborhood? Is it really just kind of in the UK, like is it more of like I'm going to work hard at this certain job and just do it my best and not really look outside of it? What I'm trying to see what the difference between the two cultures is that you were referencing.
Yeah, so I'll start by saying pretty much every British founder is filled with jealousy watching the American startup scene. We all sit here and wish that was what we could get involved with. It's completely different to over here. We're filled with envy. But yeah, I would say it's ingrained in British attitude and culture, maybe, in that people in Britain are very much, don't shout about what you're doing, be humble. You're not meant to step out of line, kind of thing. It's a case of, you, like I say, you're born, you go to school, you go to university, you get your job, you work your way up the corporate ladder, you retire with your family, and that's it. And that is fine for so many people. It really is. But I know so many people get caught up in that system because that is what the normal is, and that's what they're told to do. So many people, and I don't know if that's a global thing or not, but that really is the attitude that we have over here. And it's horrible to see, because I have so many of my friends approach me and they say, "Oh, Rich, what if I was to do this? And what if I was to do that? And can I give a go at that?" And all I do is yes, yes, yes. Give it a go. Give it a try. Just you don't know what's going to happen.
To all of it.
Yeah, just give it a go. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Don't be silly and throw stupid money at it. Just give it a try. Just get a landing page. Speak to some potential customers. Put something together. Put a little deck together. Pitch it to a few people. See what happens. Give it a go. And we don't have enough of that over here. In America, we all sit here and watch you, and we're like, wow, that you reward creativity, you reward ambition, and that's what should be rewarded. But over here, it's just not. And that's why, you look at the startups that come out of America compared to the ones that come out of the UK and Europe, and they're just different levels. Let's be honest, they are just different levels. And I don't think that's because there's a lack of talent here. I just think we're naturally more risk adverse in the UK, and that's a lot of the investment scene is massively risk adverse in comparison to that of stateside.
Man, those cultural differences are so fascinating. I think, our previous generation, like our parents, even over here in the States, there was a lot less entrepreneurship. There was a lot more of this is how you do it. You work for 50 years for the same company and hopefully retire one day or have a pension and whatnot. And I think now we're starting to see over here in the US that, there is a lot more entrepreneurship, and through social media, I think people are getting to see all the different opportunities that are out there for them with entrepreneurship and podcasts and et cetera, et cetera. So I think, hearing your description of how it is over there, I mean, it sounds like, being an entrepreneur is just hard, regardless of where you live and your location that you're starting up in. But man, it sounds like you're fighting even more headwinds over there, just with the getting started, working against a culture that isn't as entrepreneur friendly. I wanted to ask you, because we always want to take it back to what can our listeners glean out of this conversation to figure out whether entrepreneurship is right for them, how to go about it, and just how to get started. So what would you say was the best move that you've made since starting Venue that has set you up and positioned you to have the success that you've already enjoyed?
Yeah, so I would say the one thing that is vital, and the best step that I would say in taking to start a business, would be identify who you're selling to. Identify the key customer profile. Find out who is the absolute best person to buy from you. And you've got to build relationships with these people. Just run things past them, speak to them, get a real insight into where their struggles are, where their issues are, and start to weave your product around what they say, weave your idea around what they say. And then if you can get a handful of these people who are your key customer profiles, and when you're ready to start building something, you've got a group of people who are highly invested in what you're doing because they've been giving you that feedback. They've been working alongside you. So they feel part of the project, and you have people that you can immediately sell to, that you can get the best level of feedback from. So I would say that is definitely the best step to take when starting something, is just to put something together and find out who that key customer profile is and just get working with them.
What is the, Doug was talking about what you attribute your success to. So, or the success that you're building. I know a lot of people don't like to say, well, I have not success yet, like I'm building the success, but do you, the pairing between luck and just like hard work, how do you connect those two worlds?
I believe that hard work makes luck a lot of the time. And I think that, of course, you can't control luck, but I feel like you can make your own luck a lot of the time. And I feel like that's what I've done, is that people might look at some of the stuff that we've done, people that we've worked with, people that I have connections with and whatnot, and say, you're lucky to have all this, and you're lucky to have been raising money, and you're lucky to, and in a sense, I am very lucky in that I was born in the UK. I've not come from a difficult background at all, and I'm very aware of that. I could have been
Right.
born somewhere that I just didn't have access to the internet. I didn't have access to water, to basic, human rights. So I am lucky in that sense. But then in terms of actually then taking the platform that I have and making the most of it, that is just from making those opportunities myself and throwing myself out there in every way possible to make my own luck.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of our other previous guests that I just had this conversation with, another friend the other day, is he was increasing, he says, doing the hard work, putting yourself out there, you're increasing your surface area for serendipity. And I think that's what you were just referencing. Like, you were doing the little things, putting yourself out there, grinding. You were just creating a bigger surface area for more of those lucky coins to land on. So the bigger plate you build for yourself, lucky things are going to happen if you build a big area for those lucky things to land on. I love that about your story.
Yeah, and I think it's the same when you read stuff about sort of purchasing decisions. You see that people need a certain amount of touch points before they decide, I'll purchase something. And
Right.
that's the same with you as a person, because ultimately people are purchasing you, whether that's not by cash, but it's they're paying with their time. If they want to have a conversation with you, they're paying with their time, because they could be putting that time elsewhere. So if you can constantly give them touch points and make them see, like, oh, I've seen you on LinkedIn, I've seen that post, oh, I've seen your company's done this, and I did see you message me, and so on and so on. They're just seeing the touch points more and more, and you're far more likely to make your luck by doing something like that.
Oh, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about it that way. That's really insightful.
Yeah, planting all those seeds, and then yeah, the volume of the touches.
Yeah, getting those impressions. And like you said, you message people and then you actually saw them at a conference. They're like, oh yeah, you had messaged me over here.
They're like, damn, this guy's everywhere.
Yeah, now you have that connection already, even though you thought it was a wasted, unresponded DM. And it turned out to be a great, talking point. So I love that. I was going to ask you, what do you consider like the most insightful advice that you've ever received, Richard?
This is the one thing that I have to think about, because obviously I did have a short career in the corporate world, so I can't sit here and go back on a 20-year career
Right.
and say, wow, I've got received all this. But the one thing that has stuck with me forever is a friend of mine at Deloitte turned around to me and said, Rich, you're wasted behind the desk like this. And I do remember that all the time. And he still says it to me now. He says, yeah, you were always wasted there. You were wasted there. You were wasted there. And I think that's something that, has really resonated with me, because I think, especially, again, a British thing is people fail to admit their potential. And I think most people are capable of doing fantastic things. I don't think it takes someone special to do it. I genuinely believe that anyone can really go out and get something. You do have to sacrifice things in return to get that one fantastic thing, but I believe anyone can do it. So yeah, for me, it was, my friend turning around saying, you're wasted behind a desk in
Wow.
an accountancy laptop. So yeah, from there I went for it.
That could be one of the most powerful compliments that changed the whole course of your life and your career. Were you do you think back on that as like, if he hadn't said that to me, maybe I'd still be there? Or were you going either way?
In all honesty, I was probably going either way. Let's be honest, but it's something that, even like for example, if like I was saying earlier, you have those funky 5 minutes where you're like, oh, what am I doing? Like, this is crazy. This is obscene. I can just get a job. You think back and you think, oh, but he turned around to me and said, you're wasted here. Why would I go back and waste myself? We've come so far. Why would I go and waste myself behind the desk? And that's not me saying you're wasting yourself behind a desk, but for me, I feel like that's not where I will reach my potential. My potential is doing this. And even if this was to fail, I wouldn't go back and get another job. I wouldn't. I would try and start something new. I would go straight back into it, because this is what I see myself doing. I don't see myself working for someone else. So yeah, I would have left anyway, but I think that was something that maybe confirmed, like, don't be here, go and do your thing.
Wow. That's super interesting.
You have so much conviction. It's really clear and apparent. So when you thought about creating this app, I mean, clearly you don't have a tech background, right? You're not a programmer. So it seems like, from this conversation and looking into your background, one of your big superpowers is the marketing genius. You seem like you have a knack for marketing. What can we talk a little bit about your thoughts on marketing? How you have thrived there as a young company, and what advice you would share from some of your marketing successes and failures?
Without even paying for marketing.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm definitely not the technical brains. My CTO is the guy for that. He's a genius. He's fantastic. I can't speak highly enough of him. But yeah, I was saying earlier, I do have really strong thoughts on early stage marketing, and I have strong opinions on it because I've seen so many companies raise a big chunk of money and they just throw it away in marketing because they just think, oh, I can just allocate all this capital. Or even if it's, being bootstrapped and they're tight for money, but they want to put all this money into marketing. I just see it so often. It just gets thrown on Facebook ads, Google ads, different ads on the internet.
Right.
And it just doesn't work. So I'm very much a believer of just getting directly in front of people and doing it for as cheap as possible. So again, I'll give away one little nugget of something that I did to get early users. So I just went online. I mocked up a venue graphic, and it had a QR code that if you scan the QR code, it takes you to download the app. And I would walk up and down busy high streets in big cities, so Cardiff, London, Bristol. I'd walk up and down that with this graphic on my phone. And I would just frantically airdrop this graphic to everyone in the street. So everyone would get this graphic coming through on their phone and they'd say accept, decline, whatever it might be. But you'll be surprised by how many people actually accept this. And they'd scan the graphic, it would take them through. And we get loads of things like that. And that's where my mind is with early stage marketing. Because if you don't have a recognizable brand, there is so much rubbish on the internet. More often than not, people are just going to skip past it. I don't recognize you. I don't know you. A lot of the time, it can work for people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not completely dismissing it. But for the most of us, you don't have a recognized name. You don't have a big budget. You can afford, you can get creative with it and you can do things that don't cost £1 million. So yeah, that's one of the things that we did early on to get a lot of users that work really well. Wow. So that's kind of my kind of thoughts around that for sure.
That's badass.
Guerrilla marketing on the streets of London.
Yeah, I'm a huge guerrilla marketing fan. Yeah, huge. I've got so many plans, guerrilla marketing. And I mean, that's just the beginning. The plans I have are unbelievable. We'll do some amazing stuff. Very confident that will get us a lot of traction.
I'm so excited to see that coming. This has been such like a powerful episode, both on sort of where how your story worked its way through from getting that piece of corporate and then innately knowing this doesn't fit me. And then one of your friends telling you you're a waste here. You're wasting your time here. To now, starting a company, having the insane growth and catching on after you dealt with the struggles of COVID. Like the whole way you walked us through the story today, I think that our audience is really going to love it. So thank you so much for sharing your absolute transparency also on your struggles that you've had, because it's not easy being an entrepreneur.
No, I appreciate you guys having me. And yeah, I definitely second that. It's not easy being an entrepreneur, but it is very rewarding and it fills you with pride when you actually do things well.
Absolutely.
Man, Rich, you've accomplished so much at such a young age, and we are so impressed and look forward to seeing what you're going to do in the future. I'm sure it's going to be huge.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. And I definitely look forward to keeping up with the podcast, see how it goes.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Well, we look forward. I highly recommend you, before we jumped on, you had talked about how you were thinking about starting a podcast. So when you get that set up, reach out to us. I know our audience would love to hear from you and some of those other startup entrepreneurs in your neighborhood that you're going to get together and talk about some of the best practices that you guys have had. That sounds super interesting to me, and I'm sure our audience would love it also.
For sure. Definitely. I appreciate that. We'll do.
Where should we send people? People are going to want to reach out to you and learn more about Venue. Where should we send them?
So the best place for me is LinkedIn. So I'm Richard Lee. Lee is spelled L-E-E on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me there. And then our website is Venue, spelled venyu.co.uk. You can find out all the information about the company there. But yeah, feel free to drop me a line. I'm always active on LinkedIn, so I'll get back to everyone.
I love it. Thanks so much for the time, Richard. This was absolutely awesome.
No, thank you guys. Thank you for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining in today. Don't forget, subscribe, follow, and check out findyourfreedompod.com.